We both saw White Boy Rick.
Yes, we saw White Boy Rick. This is a movie that we talked about the trailer for. We're both looking forward to it. I know you may have been looking forward to it a bit more than me because you've seen a movie made by this director and I haven't.
This is the dude who did 71?
Yes, Jan Demange.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I remember remember that.
But I remember really looking forward to this because the trailer really presented like, okay, this is going to be like a Black Mass meets like Wolf of Wall Street type, this is what happens when you live fast and loose, kid, like cautionary tale type thing. And is that the movie we got?
I would say so in some ways.
I would say it is in ways, but it's also
depressing.
Way more depressing than I ever anticipated it being.
Yeah, well, there's a couple scenes in mind that I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah, especially towards the end.
Well,
and a couple in the middle.
Yes. But just to get the overall kind of feeling of the movie, it was well shot.
Weirdly well shot.
Yeah.
Because it was not working with much in terms of Detroit. And God love Detroit, but there's some parts of that city that don't look great. And the color palette is disgusting.
You know what the thing is?
But it still looks good.
This is one of those movies, and I've said this a number of times, but I'm not going to stop saying because I think it's such an important thing to telling a great story, or at least a lot of the times it's very helpful. Mm-hmm. Some movies, that's just like, whatever, we're in a city, blah, blah, doesn't matter. It's about the scary guy in the mask, or it's about the gangsters or the superhero. This, it's like Detroit's a character.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit is one of the characters that helps, tell the story.
Yeah, it's one of the only constants in the story.
Yeah,
is the setting.
It's the setting is very important to this movie, and as you said, it paints a sort of bleak picture. And of course, the plot is Rick Wershey Jr., one of two children of a single father, Rick Wershey Sr., and he's kind of a hustler, and he's selling like guns illegally because he's just
out of the trunk of his car.
Yeah, he's just trying to make money. Mm-hmm. And his character, by the way, man, it's weird. The one thing that was weird about this movie, and I'm not one of those people where I have to have someone to root for. Mm-hmm. That does not matter to me all the time. It's a matter of how is this going to work out for these characters,
right?
Or like, where's this going? It's like, I want to see how this plays out.
Right. I love the character, too. Yeah,
his character, it's weird saying this, because he was, like, no one's really, like, innocent in this. They painted him in a relatively sympathetic light.
Yeah, and it's the performance by Matthew McConaughey in particular that does it, because that dude, as soon as he's on screen, he immediately commands your likability. You're like, oh, Matthew McConaughey. And the character, in many ways, is the most tragic in the movie because he constantly is just like, yeah, no, I'm doing the right thing. I want to make sure my kids are X, Y, Z, all of these things that I want them to be. But it's just like, oh, man, that's not how you raise kids.
Yeah.
You're like, and you want to see him get it right because you can tell he loves his two kids, but fuck, he just can't.
But Rick Wershey, like, that's what's weird is Wershey Jr., you can kind of get the impression that even though he may not be like super book smart or whatever, that he sees through shit.
Yeah,
like,
he's sharp.
He's got the street smarts, and that's why, like, when he starts selling drugs, as the movie's main focus is he just kind of like he kind of just enters that world so nonchalantly, and he just kind of thinks he gets away with it,
right?
And in some ways he does, and in a lot of ways he ends up not. But for the immediate time being when he starts, things just seem to work out. And of course, his sister also seemed Dawn Wershey, played by
Wershey.
Belle Powley.
Yeah.
So she also kind of sees through it, but she's much more visceral about it.
Right. Yeah, it's a really messed up family situation. I think it's really brought to light extremely well by the performances. What did you think about? Well, I guess let's dive into.
Well, let's get the basic plot out there.
Yeah. So basically, Richard Wershey, or Ricky Wershey Jr., played by Richie Merritt in this, He's like a 14, 15-year-old kid, and he, through some form or another, gets involved with the FBI, through his dad, basically, because his dad's selling guns illegally. And the FBI agents who are going after his dad kind of pull him aside and say, like, hey, what if we got you to be an informant for us, and you buy drugs on behalf of us so we can build a case against some of these guys running East Detroit into the ground. And you can keep some of the profits from it. Like, what do you think about that? And he's like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So lo and behold, he builds a career, builds a whole lot of wealth, buying drugs and pushing drugs on behalf of is it the Curry gang in East Detroit?
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, and it's a really interesting story because, again, this kid's a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's doing all of this.
Yeah, it's like by the time he was 16, he was an informant for the FBI. And, of course, this is based on a true story.
Yes.
There's one weird criticism I kept seeing a lot of places saying, like, the movie, it blows things out of proportion. It portrays him as if he was, like, a big-time player. And I don't really think it does. I think the portrayal of Wershie Jr., it's more like he thought he was a bigger time than he was.
It's very honest.
Yeah,
it's not trying to.
I don't think it portrayed him as like he was running the whole city.
Right.
He had some. It portrayed him as a guy who had some connections.
Right. He made some connections. He networked, if you will.
Yeah.
he worked the block, and he made a lot of money doing it, more than any 15-year-old would.
And the Blue Ranger was there to help him.
He sure was.
R.J. Seiler.
Yeah, man, he's good. He had a good.
I want to see more of that kid. He's a good actor.
He's good as the Blue Ranger. He's good in this. He was in something else this year, I think. Wasn't he in like a horror movie or something?
I don't know. Why don't you look it up?
I guess he wasn't. He was in a couple movies I haven't seen, but he's masterful in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl as Earl.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, I knew that he had one other real big one.
Yeah, man, he's great.
The cast all around's really good.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy who plays Lil Man Curry, but he was.
His name is Jonathan Majors.
Yeah.
And he's great.
He had a very, I don't know, kind of commanding,
very, like, unhinged and, like, kind of just always, like, you're unpredictable. Like, he's got a scary energy about him.
Yeah, he had a certain presence to him.
Yeah.
And every scene he was in, you could definitely feel it. Mm-hmm. And, God, fuck, it's just impossible to talk about this movie without spoilers.
Yeah, which is weird, because it's a true story.
Couple more general comments, we're moving to spoilers.
Performances are good.
Performances are more than good.
Overall, they're good, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, Richie Merritt he's a young kid.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, and maybe this is what the kids that Richard Wershie Jr.'s really like, but, like, he wasn't that expressive.
Yeah, I noticed that, but it wasn't like...
I couldn't tell if that was the point.
Yeah.
It might have been.
It kind of seemed like he was sort of like soft spoken. That was just his way. Yeah. But that's kind of what I'm saying is he wasn't like making a big show. He's like, "What's up, guys?" Just like walks in the back, like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I just want to sell some drugs and hang out and be cool."
Right. But make no mistake, this is the Matthew McConaughey show, and he does an incredible job as White Boy Rick's father. But moving on now, we're good for spoilers. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Looks great. The movie looks really, really good.
Yeah, I think it does a good job of portraying the city. Mm-hmm. It portrays it as, pretty honestly. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I usually tend to get annoyed by is when movies try to overdo things. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like that happens a lot with movies in Boston. It's just like, yeah, Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, Southie.
We're going to get the party started. It's just like,
I'm going to park the car in the yard. Pretty much. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's like it's easy to caricaturize a city, But in many ways, this movie, again, it felt very authentic. It felt like a very authentic retelling of the events that happen. Sometimes to a fault. And on that, let's get into some spoilers.
All right, so let's talk some spoilers. I just want to get this scene out of the way. That scene where they have to get Dawn, where they pick her up from the
flop house.
Yeah, the trap house or whatever they called it back then. Mm-hmm. Is that a modern term?
I have no idea.
I don't fucking know.
The drug den.
The drug den. That was just gut wrenching.
That whole sequence where I'm like, Because that's what I mean by like he
That-
is a good dad. Like he's clean. He's making sure his daughter's clean. But like you sell firearms illegally. Like that's just.
But it's
weird.
also like to get to that point.
Where it's like you're literally firemen's carrying her out of the fucking drug den. Like God.
Well, it's like one of the best lines that I think summed up the whole movie. And I got a good chuckle out of my theater. It's like, I can't remember what Matthew McConaughey says exactly. He says something along the lines of like, I think I'm doing all right as a father. And then he's just like, your daughter's addicted to like crack and I'm shitting in a bag. That's after he gets shot in the abdomen, so he has the colostomy bag.
That got a laugh from our audience also.
Yeah, and it's just like I thought, so poignant.
Yeah, man, and that was a rough one. The other rough one where I'm like, oh man, is the sort of the post Vegas trip where Johnny Lil Man Curry shoots up what he thinks is the one dude's house.
Yeah.
It is his house, but he's not there. And like the one brother gets shot, and like the other
You're talking about the guy like Leon something?
Leon Lucas, I think was his
The
name.
guy who got them the fake tickets to Hearns Hagler.
Yeah.
Which was awesome that they included Hearns Hagler.
Yeah, man. Oh, so crazy.
Detroit boxing.
Yeah. But that fucking scene where it's just like, it's like the aftermath, and like the one brother goes over to the other brother and is like, hey man, hold on, I'm going to call the police. And he's just like telling him to like be okay. And I'm like, you're like 7 years old. I'm like, fuck, this is fucked up. But really good, man.
It's
like,
there's a lot of scenes that just kind of, it's the harsh realities.
Yeah, like
it's like
him
similar,
getting shot.
It's like similar to Heat.
Yeah.
There's nothing like, nothing about
glamorous.
it. No, there's nothing glamorous. It portrays the ugliness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like spinning like sidekick.
Yeah.
Hi-yah,
It's not
like
a John
flying
Woo
through
movie.
there. Yeah. It's not a John Woo movie
This isn't
where
Face Off.
he makes a wuxia dance out of shooting each other.
Yeah.
This is about as grounded as it gets.
They're going to do the haka before they have a shootout.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I get what you mean. That's the thing I get, and I haven't even seen 71, but just from the trailers, it's like this is a director that's all about the authenticity.
Yeah, because that's the thing is 71. The initial trailer kind of made it look like more of like action, but it's definitely not.
Right.
71. It's incredibly gritty and fuck it. I don't want to give it away, but
Right.
71's some good shit. You
I gotta
see
check it out.
You really gotta see it.
Yeah, and
I
especially
would
after
say
this.
just kind of off the top of my head, I liked 71 better than this.
I would imagine, yeah, that's the impression I got too,
'Cause
talking with you about it.
Right, because this was good, but one thing I guess, so we've done some of the good. We've talked about some key feature scenes.
Yes.
There now, I guess, like things we noticed / bad. Well, I'd like to start. Apparently, the portrayal of the dad is some people disagreed with it. Like said he wasn't really a sympathetic person in real life. I don't know about that because I've just read accounts. So
Right.
That's all I really have to go off of. There was that, and I don't really think that would have taken away from the movie, at least. That's kind of the nature of the game, though, and it's like kind of why I find the based on a true story thing kind of tedious sometimes.
Yeah, no, especially in taking liberties with certain elements of the story.
Right. It's
for
like,
effect.
Because it's like there's certain times where it's, I guess I don't notice or care as much. Like Scorsese's kind of an exception to the rule. If he changes stuff, it doesn't really matter to me because I feel like he wants to tell the story his way no matter what.
Right.
Or based on whatever like book he uses, he just kind of rolls with it. But sometimes, I don't know, just like with a lot of other true story movies, it just kind of irks me when I learn like, what the fuck? What do you mean that didn't happen?
Yeah, like, well, what's your biggest offender?
Oh, Jesus Christ. The worst offender of that, obviously, is Saving Mr. Banks, because for those of you playing at home, Saving Mr. Banks was the one about Walt Disney trying to convince P.L. Travers, the writer of Mary Poppins, to sign over the rights.
Yep.
Except in real life, she already signed over the rights. So the whole movie is her complaining like, oh, you suck, I don't want to sign over the rights. And then he convinced her, she said, oh, all right. Except in real life, it was already done. Like Walt Disney had said something along the lines of, that ship has sailed. When she tried bitching about like, I want the rights back because you're fucking up my thing.
Right.
And then on top of that, the most egregious error in the movie theater at the end, she's crying because she's so happy because it reminds her of Daddy in England. In real life, she was crying because she fucking hated the movie.
Right.
She was crying because she was so frustrated. And I'm not saying like I agree or disagree with either party, Walt Disney or P.L. Travers. I'm just saying that's bullshit.
You lied.
You lied. The whole movie, the whole premise of the movie didn't happen. Mm-hmm. This, as far as I know, yes, he was.
The big shit happened.
Yeah.
Like him getting shot happened.
Him getting shot happened. He had a daughter.
Right. All of that stuff pretty much happened. The drug addiction of the sister. There's just some like little ancillary things like, Ricky Wershey Sr.'s attitude towards the FBI agents that White Boy Rick was working for. Like, that's not actually what it was or whatever. Like
that was sort of a bigger one, but I was willing to roll with it for the sake of the movie.
Right, just for the sake of, like, we need more conflict.
Yeah, because he was, in the movie, he's portrayed as like, no, I don't want you near my boy. And, like, apparently, senior in real life was like, this could be a lucrative opportunity or whatever.
Right. Which might, I guess, elucidate some of the, maybe the real Ricky Wershey Sr. was not a great dude.
But it's just like, I don't know. It's hard to say. I love his big comeuppance. When I have the video store.
Oh God, it's so sad. It's like that's his. That's his going to Fiji. If this were Heat, if it's De Niro's character, it's like the video store. It's like, oh man, that's never gonna happen.
But
dude.
what's weird is you're so sure it's not gonna happen. At least the way it's portrayed in the movie, and it does.
Yeah.
And then like things seem to go swimmingly. And then, like, things are starting to come together, and then they fall apart again.
Yeah, towards the end, which is weird because the movie feels like and this is one of my biggest issues with the movie, but it's also one of my biggest pros with the movie, is the authenticity of the story and how it's presented. It feels like real life.
It chronicles, like, 3 or 4 years of Wershey Jr.'s life.
Yeah, because there's a part where when the Curry gang goes down, which is like 2/3 of the way through the movie, that feels like the end of the movie.
Yeah, it kind of did.
So you're like, why are we still doing this? And then you realize by the end, oh shit, you realize like this whole movie is basically Jan Demange and the screenwriters, like, you acting as a juror watching Ricky Wershey Jr.'s life. And basically by the end of the movie, when you realize that he's going to be on trial and you learn that he goes to prison for the rest of his life, you as an audience member are supposed to look at that and kind of, I would say, correctly be like, well, what the fuck? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't really do anything, especially in context of all these other violent, like, in the context of, like, all the really bad shit that goes on in Detroit.
Yeah,
he did some bad shit and should go to prison. But, like,
the sentence was too long.
Oh, yeah. And, like, the whole premise of the 650 lifer statute in Detroit is, like, very weird, especially when it concerns, like, nonviolent drug dealers and, like, people who deal drugs that have never... It's weird, man. Like, when Little Man Curry, like, when they showed in the post-text that he got out, like, he only spent 20 years for being connected to the murder of a fucking child.
Yeah.
And, like, Ricky Wershey Jr. here is to spend the rest of his life in jail, potentially. It's like, no, I don't care. Like, that's wrong. That's morally wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, he should be in jail, but not for... Oh, man. And that's where the depressing element comes in. This sucks.
Well, that's the other thing is, a lot of super depressing movies have some element of realism.
Yeah, harsh realism.
Well, Patriots Day obviously had the scars of a real life terrorism event. Mm-hmm. This had scars of like people's lives just being ruined.
Yeah,
and even Grave of Fireflies, which is animated, World War II happened, and I don't know if that movie is based specifically off of any real stories, but it's just like
felt real.
Jesus Christ, did it feel real for a cartoon? I was just like, fuck, I need to get outside. I need sunlight, damn it. Luckily, we saw Mad Max Fury Road, which was like the perfect way to be like,
breath of fresh air.
Violence when it's fun.
Yeah.
And,
man.
And those cars, man.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Cars.
And the guitars.
Cars and guitars, it's a perfect... diversion from like, isn't life shitty? No. Those strings come in, they're just like stabbing the heart. It's like, geez. But then the cars and guitars. And you're like, thank God. That guitar shoots flamethrowers. Anyway, this was kind of rough. Like, I wouldn't put it on like my top like 10 list of like Jesus. Like,
yeah, no, it's
like,
not.
This is no
bad.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape
Yeah.
in terms of depressing ass movies. But like, I don't know if I'd say depressing. It's glum.
It's very glum.
It's glum. I
very
wouldn't
harsh.
go as far as depressing, but it's harsh and it's glum.
And the end,
And-
especially, is very sad.
And I think part of that came from, as you said, it's kind of a weird like detractor and sort of a positive thing. Was the pacing was a bit weird because of the way it chronicled the 3 or 4 years. But to me, there was times where I'm like, all right, I get that you're doing your weird like art thing, but like, where the fuck is this going? Like, I wasn't bored, but I'm like, just fucking get on with it.
Yeah.
I was just like, come on, I want to see what happens next. Which I guess is good because that beats the alternative. I'm like, please just end.
Yeah, that was the exact same way until like now. Like looking back, it's like, oh, I get why they did this scene. But like at the time, I was like, where are we going with this? Like, what is this about? But it is one of those movies. I look back in hindsight, it's like it's a lot better than it was while I was watching it. It's a lot. I think it's a lot better looking back than it is while I was watching it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So what did you think about? As much as the acting was great, I don't know if you thought the same. Did you feel like some lines were a little clunkily delivered?
On the part of who?
Well, just I think everyone had one where I'm like,
Well, there's some
like
where
there was the. I think it was just because it was so on the nose. Mm-hmm. Like you're the worst father ever, and it's like,
oh yeah,
something just felt weird about that.
Yeah, they did do a bunch of those were there, but for me, it's like they tried to do some stuff where they tried to Nolan, I call it, where it's like they do they bring up a line or they bring up a thing and they just keep planting and paying it off throughout the movie. Like
the
Lions
at
in
least
the
you got-
Serengeti and shit like that. Like at the end, like one of the last things that fucking
Like the
McConaughey says, like
looks
"You're
and-
my lion" or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, that's
don't
what I
know.
mean. I felt like everyone had like one like little line. Again, I don't think it met my five shitty lines to start docking points.
right.
It was just I couldn't help but notice there's a couple times I'm like, that was it felt weirder because based on the rest of their performance, which was so good, it felt like out of place to have that one line I wasn't buying.
Yeah, I get you. It's definitely, oh man, it's weird. I think it's a weird story in that it's maybe some of these things were said. I look at the tone and I'm like, was this like how thorough is this movie in research?
Yeah.
It's like, but overall, yeah, I think it's a conundrum of a movie in that its biggest asset and its biggest fault are the fact that it's such a grounded thing.
Yeah.
It's so grounded that it feels real, but it's like it's so grounded that it moves like real life in many ways.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I understand you can do that as a choice. I don't know if that was intentional or not. It seems like it probably was, but to me, like that is sort of a detractor because there's times where I'm like, the up and down, the drop in action. I'm like, all right, can we move this along a little? Mm-hmm. So overall, though, it was a solid movie, well crafted.
Yes.
Highlight performances.
Yes, particularly in the part of McConaughey.
Particularly on the part of McConaughey. I thought Bel Powley was particularly good as well.
Yes, very convincing.
Jesus Christ, I keep forgetting his name. Lil Man Curry.
Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors was fantastic.
Yeah, it's an overall very solid flick.
All right, so
probably a good cable watch.
Yeah, I would say this would be an excellent FX rainy day.
Yeah, man.
I don't even know if that's like fair because I'm giving this a. Actually, yeah, no, I gave something else the same score and I said the same remark, I believe. But I thought it was pretty damn good. It was worth seeing. So, what would you score it?
Take a guess.
7.5.
Oh no, just a 7.
Okay. It's weird because I scored a 3.5.
Yeah, no, we felt the same.
Yeah,
and I agree.
That's weird.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's a solid watch, but not the best. I said after walking out, I'm like, this is not the best version of what this was, but it's a good version of what it is.
But it's a 10.5 out of 15.
Yes, that's good.
Overall, it was a solid movie.